ambiguities. For example, how perversely Hitler figure relates to speech. You remember there are some wonderful scenes. One is where Hegel dictates his secretary, and Chaplin plays wonderfully on a total gap, non-correspondence between his dictation and what happens. For example, once he says 3-4 words, and the secretary types for 1 minute. Then he goes on for 2 minutes, and the secretary does ta-ta, 2 sounds. And then as if playing with your spectators deceived expectations, the Hegel figure said, oh, something is wrong, looks at what the girl typed and said, oh, okay, you did it right, and so on. Or, you remember when Hegel has a speech, it's a wonderful speech, total obscenity of a speech, you don't understand anything, only from time to time you identify some totally vulgar common word, say Wiener Schnitzel, Apfelstrudel, or things like that, and so on. So what he was aware is that something very deep is that human voice is never simply a property of us as a body. That there is always a kind of a ventriloquist aspect to it. That voice is potentially what Lacan calls the object A. That, how should I put it, partial organ within you which controls you, a potentially destabilizing a foreign intruder. And this is how he plays with voice. It's a wonderful scene in the beginning when we first hear Hegel's voice, when he's walking with the girl and then a Nazi guy starts to chase them, and then how the whole scene is a kind of a ballet dominated by Hitler's voice. You know, when Hitler goes slowly, the voice, they walk slow. So this idea of a voice not as a spontaneous, realistic expression, that's what Chaplin saw already. And it's interesting how other intelligent directors also saw. Like one of the great early sound movies was Fritz Lang, Testament of Dr. Mabuse, where the topic is exactly the same. Mabuse, the arch criminal, is known as a voice. The problem of the entire film is exactly the same as Hitchcock's Psycho decades later. You have a free-floating voice to find a body for this voice. And this is basically, as Michel Chion, a very good theorist, elaborated, the problem of Hitchcock's Psycho. It's the problem of the voice, mother's voice, floating around. And the problem is, whose voice is this, to find the body to this voice. So, you see my point. My point is that Chaplin's idea is very Freudian, one naively Freudian, that the silent movie universe was a kind of a oral, anal, pre-sexual, pre-superego flat universe of, like cartoons, of undead people where life goes on indefinitely, you know. It's a little bit like in cartoon, in all those Max Sennett comedies, you know. You can be hit, you can be run over, you stand up, it always goes on. There is no death, there is no sexuality, basically, although there are, and I love them, it's maybe my racism and so on, but there are such stupid, if there is sexuality, it's usually reduced to some extremely primitive oral level. For example, I remember, these were times when this was still possible in Hollywood, a scene where a lady is taking a bath, and of course, the black guy, the cliché was they are horny all the time, who is carrying a big block of ice, takes it up to an apartment, and the door is a little bit open, sees the lady there, naked in the bath, and he does, and of course all the ice melts instantly, and so on. But you know, this is not sexuality, this is more a primitive oral anal logic, and again, how then it's the... So, the important message is this one, is that what sound introduces is not more natural, that the basic impact of sound on cinema was not naturalization. It was not before. There were just silent images. Now we can see real people acting and so on. No. Sound, the voice, speech especially, was from the beginning this sound, talk, searching for a body, something haunting you, and so on and so on. And this is basically what Lacan is saying, for example, when he talks about voice as the object mole. Yes?
I don't want to drag you even farther from Hegel, but is that the issue in Sunset Boulevard?
In
Sunset Boulevard?
You can say, yes, you can say that, although there is another Billy Wilder, we don't have time to I would love to go, which goes even much more into these dark consequences of this old-young split. Did you see his later movie, Total Failure, Fedora? I know it's a totally strange movie about an actress who appears young, to be young, and everybody thinks she's doing nice plastic operations, but at the end you learn that she's really an old, totally disfigured lady, and that she simply replaced herself by her daughter. And it's such a totally pessimistic, it's the dark...
You're saying it's a box office failure, but does it have any philosophical, intellectual, artistic merit?
Not even, no, it didn't even arouse great attention at this level.
That's curiosity.
No, but I think it should be. But you know, we cinema theorists, this is our favorite sport. To discover, to focus on a failure and then to claim, oh, but this is the true masterpiece. Like, I even once planned with Fred Jameson to do a whole book on Hitchcock's failures. Playing the game of choose a Hitchcock movie which was obviously a failure and pull it out. For example, in France, there was a whole school in early 50s where the candidate for this failure, which is really the masterpiece, was a rather embarrassing Australian melodrama, Did You See It Under Capricorn? You see, you even don't know it, from, I think, 52, 53, totally ridiculous story of Ingrid Bergman living with an ex-convict there, some melodrama and so on. There was the school in France, this is the true Hitchcock. Fred Jameson's choice is but I think there it is even a good movie. It's the one with Marlene Dietrich, Stage Fright. You know, it's a movie which is famous for false. Hitchcock violates a rule there. You know, the flashback. The rule is that if you show a flashback, it should be true. That you cannot lie at the level of flashback. Hitchcock lies, you discover at the end. Because at the beginning, the hero encounters a girl, tells her what is happening. At the end, we discover, not just tells her, we see it. No? Okay. My choice would have been, and I still think it's an extraordinary movie. It's the lowest of the lowest. Considered Hitchcock's worst movie, Topaz. You know, that anti-communist movie, Cuba and so on. Okay, but we are getting lost now, I admit it. So what I wanted to tell you is this, where we experienced a historical break at its purest. With this impossibility and how precisely, how should I put it, how because of these precisely conservatives who want to stick to the old, usually see more, see the uncanny. For example, here, it was those who thought, sound movie is just a chance to do either musicals or more realistic dramas who are today forgotten. What we are still looking for is precisely those who resisted sound and then tried to use it in different ways and so on. But let me go on. So, okay, we have this situation. Now, your first obvious association, if you know a little bit of philosophy, would have been that, but is Hegel's speculative absolute idealism not precisely the supreme case of such historical impossibility? The idea is that Hegel is the last big example of radical idealism, where you can, as it were, cover the entire reality through the self-deployment, self-mediation of the notion in the sense of